It's 1990. We are entering the boom of comic books being published in ridiculously large quantities. And we're also seeing a surgence of popularity amongst video game comic books. There's going to be a whole lot more as we look at this CGC population report, books from 1990. Up next on this video from Bronzeville Comics. Hello, panelologists. This is Jim from Bronzeville Comics. Welcome you to another video, and we're going to get to our 1990 CGC population report video. We are using the information from CGCdata.com. It for some reason hasn't been updated since like mid-September. So if you look up counts of these books on your own, they'll probably be more on the census, especially at this period in time because of the large number of books that were available. We're entering the comic boom of the early 1990s. Where speculators were buying up multiple copies of books, anticipating, being able to fund their kids' college education, and the books are worth less than a textbook. So some of these books do have value, and we're going to get to the more obscure ones, which probably have a higher value. But these are the books, according to CGC data.com, that have the most blue label copies on the population report. We don't have signature series included, so it's just blue labels, but it gives us a pretty good idea. And again, on this video, we don't talk a lot about values, but books that are more submitted are going to have more value. We will talk about that maybe in the difference between 1 and 2 here. But books, especially from this era that are harder to find, are going to have lower population report counts. And if they're desirable, the demand is going to outpace the supply. But we will talk about some really fun books, and we have a lot of books to get to. So we count down the top 10. We include the top 10 from both DC and Marvel. We include the top books from all the independent publishers. And we also include other titles from independent publishers as long as there are more copies than the DC or Marvel top 10. So we're starting to see a lot of other publishers jumping into the mix here in 1990. We're going to start off. Let's go to number 10. Coming in at number 10 on the list is Spider-Man number 1, the polybagged edition. Now, we're going to be talking a lot about Spider-Man number 1, and this is a book of tremendous popularity. There were scores, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of these printed in different variations. This is the polybagged edition, and there is a distinction on the CGC label. There's very little difference between this and the regular version, except that the webbing is more purple in hue than gray. And there's, not a lot of difference in value because there are plenty of both of them. The number 10 book here has 2,602 copies on the population report. Coming in at number 9 is Uncanny X-Men number 268. Chris Claremont and Jim Lee. This famous cover with the Wolverine, Captain America, and Black Widow. And, of course, only one of them is a member of the X-Men. This is a story, and there is some confusion. It's a story set during World War II, but there's a framing sequence. The same framing sequence includes all 3 characters. The World War II story, only Captain America and Wolverine, as Black Widow would have been too young to be in World War II. She was neither frozen in ice nor has a mutant healing factor. So she is a normal-aged woman. And I think the confluence of the characters here and the Jim Lee cover make this popular. There are a couple of other distinctions. There's a second print variant of this, which does have a little bit more value. And of course, with most books at this point in time, there's also a newsstand edition. The newsstands, for the most part, aren't distinguished in the population report because they're not listed separately. There could be a difference there. This has 3,092 copies on the census. Coming into number 8 is Amazing Spider-Man 328. Classic Todd McFarlane cover. This is the end of his run on Amazing Spider-Man at the beginning of the year, before he went to Spider-Man several months later. And Spider-Man is giving the Hulk a wham up there and somewhere. A very popular cover, but also a very highly produced book. There are a lot of copies out there. A lot of high-grade copies are going to be graded. Now, the thing is, books that have value, books that have more value, are more likely to get graded in grades under 9.8. This, not so much. 4,125 copies on the census. Coming in at number 7 on the list is Ghost Rider Volume 2, number 1, and this is the first appearance of the Danny Ketch Ghost Rider. This is a series that ran for 94 issues, and it was a follow-up, right? Volume 1 is with Johnny Blaze, right? That premiered in 1973, coming out of the Marvel Spotlight. But really, that should be Volume 2, and this should be Volume 3, because what about the Western Ghost Rider that was published by Marvel? Not even talking about the 1950s Ghost Rider, the Marvel series. That should be Volume 1. It's the same title, and even though he's on a horse rather than a motorcycle. Never made sense to me. Let me know in the comments if you feel differently or you agree with me. That either way is fine. There are 4,154 copies of this on the Pop Report. Coming in at number 6 is X-Men Annual number 14, the first appearance of Gambit. Now, it often refers to this as a cameo appearance. We got this great Art Adams cover, which doesn't have anything to do with Gambit, which hurts this book. It's not as desirable as another book we're going to talk about momentarily. And let's hold off on talking about the difference between first appearance and cameo and so on and so forth. The one thing that I find odd about this is the title, the official title of this, right? Some 10 years later, is still X-Men Annual, not Uncanny X-Men Annual. Anyway, there are 6,651 copies. Number 5 on the list is Spider-Man number 1, the Gold Edition, which is the second printing, and the label says Indicia states second printing. I think it came out around the same time as the regular edition, but the Gold Edition, this is a little bit more valuable. The Gold Edition has 7,205 copies on the population report. Coming in at number 4 is Spider-Man number 1. This is the direct edition. The webs appear grayer, although it's hard to tell often, depending on the color strike. But generally grayer webs mean it's direct. Purpler mean it's the polybagged. Subtle distinction here. There are 11,420 copies of this. Coming in at number 3 is New Mutants number 87, the first appearance of Cable. This by Louis Simonson story. Rob Liefeld did the art, and Todd McFarlane inked the cover. Cable, a very popular character, portrayed in the movies by Josh Brolin. Yes. And became a big part of X-Men lore in the 1990s. He had previously appeared as a baby, because he's the son of... Cable is the child from the future of Scott Summers, Cyclops, and Madeline Pryor. And he had a couple series of his own. There is a second printing of this book that is has like a bronze-ish kind of copper background. Not nearly as valuable. This has a total number of copies, Blue Label, in the population report of 13,418. The second book on the list is Spider-Man number 1, the Silver Edition. Todd McFarlane did the story and art. Basically, this is a new Spider-Man title that ran for, 98 issues. McFarlane was on there for, 18? So I'm not sure the exact number off the top of my head. But McFarlane left in a couple of years, and we'll see why in a future population report. The Silver Edition also includes, but often is not indicated on the label, a variant. There are 2 variants. There's a Blue Lizard variant, in which on one of the pages, Lizard, who's the main protagonist in this particular issue, the colors got mixed up and he appears blue instead of green. And there's another one where he's like gold, which is much rarer, but they don't make the distinction on the label, so we don't know if the book inside, it's unlikely that it is, but if you get a raw copy, just flip through it to see if it's there. Those are worth quite a bit more money. The total number of copies of this on the population report is 16,060. The number one book for 1990 on our list is Uncanny X-Men 266, the first full appearance of Gambit. We have a Chris Claremont story. Mike Collins and Joe Rubinstein did the art, and Andy Kubert did the cover. This is a much more desirable book, a more valuable book than Annual 14. And for those of you not familiar with the controversy around the first appearance versus the cameo, annuals came out during the summer, and they were intended to stay on the shelves longer than the regular issues. Basically stay on for a couple months, 2 to 3 months. Whereas a monthly issue here would stay on for a month until 267 came out. Now, in terms of the storytelling, right? You're supposed to read this one first. This was supposed to come out first. But because it was an annual, it was just shipped out a little bit earlier. And so it hit newsstands earlier. So it's the first time that the annual is the first time that you see the character Gambit. And he is fully integrated in the story, but he's not really introduced, right? He's just there as a character you should already know about because you should have read 266 first. The other thing that makes this more popular is the cover, right? X-Men Annual 14 has a fine cover. It's by Art Adams. It's very well detailed, and it is an attractive cover, but it doesn't include Gambit. Gambit became a very popular X-Men during the animated series in the 1990s, kind of put him to the fore amongst X-Men characters, especially those that were created at this point in X-Men time. And there had been clamorings to have him in the movies. He was in the Wolverine Origins movie. But then Channing Tatum portrayed him in Deadpool and Wolverine, and that has just increased the popularity of the character. And Tatum is cast as him again in Avengers Doomsday, so we're going to see more Gambit. And this is, from this era, one of the more valuable mainstream comic books. There are other books that are harder to find that have very small print runs that collectors seek out there. But for your basic Marvel DC, this is way up there. And it has a total of 23,652 copies on the population report. Now let's go past the top 10. Now the top 10 were all Marvel, right? What is it? 1, 2, 3. 4 of them were Spider-Man #1. So we got to, branch out a little bit and go outside the top 10. We're going to go to number 19 on the list, which is the top DC book for the year. And this is Lobo #1 by Keith Giffen and Simon Bisley. Alan Grant also contributed to the story. This is where we see Lobo in the form that he has maintained with the leather jacket and the attitude that really made him popular in the 1990s. Jason Momoa will be portraying him in the Supergirl film that's coming out in 2026. And that has boosted the popularity of this book. It's his first solo series. It's a 4-issue miniseries. And it is a popular Lobo book. It comes in with a total of 1,816 copies on the census. The next book on the list is Spider-Man #1, the Platinum Edition. This is by far the most valuable of all of them. It is much rarer, and it stands out, right? So the way that you recognize it, it's the same picture, and it looks very similar to the direct and the polybagged edition. But when you look at the box, there's just a large white #1 on a black field. There's no price. The trade dress, some of the little boxes, and also Spider-Man in the corner box or the UPC box down below is platinum. The back cover is completely different. This was basically a store incentive, or that they handed out to stores. It wasn't solicited. It was a freebie to stores to thank them for supporting Spider-Man #1. A valuable book. It is a more difficult book to get a 9.8, but I got a 9.8 despite the fact that it does have some flaking on the spine because it was a cardstock cover, and when those cardstock covers get folded over to create a comic book, and you have the spine there, it's very common for the color to come off, and also was in a box rubbing up, against the side of the box when it was shipped out. But harder to find and really sought out by collectors because they're Spider-Man collectors and McFarlane collectors that like to have all of the possibilities of this. And we will talk about one more. This comes in, and I was surprised it had this many. There are 1,807 copies on the census, which is essentially 1/10 of the direct. So it's like a 1 in 10 ratio, kind of. Maybe a little bit more when you add up all the different covers, but whatever. It's still not that rare. And this has 1,807, as I said. Our next book on the list is another DC book. It is Batman number 457. It's the first appearance of Tim Drake as Robin. And we can kind of see him in costume and shadows on the cover here. Alan Grant did the story. Norm Brayfogle did the art and the cover. Tim Drake was the Robin of the 90s into the 2000s. Had his own series that ran for a long time. And popular amongst fans who were introduced in the 90s. Probably, this is their favorite Robin. Succeeding Dick Grayson and Jason Todd. Everybody picks their own favorite Robin. That's, a preference. I'm an old school guy, so mine is Dick Grayson. This has a total of 1,795 copies on the census. The top book from Dark Horse is Aliens vs. Predator #1. Randy Stradley did the story. Phil Norwood did the cover and art. This is a 4-issue miniseries plus an issue number 0. It was prestige format, so it's square bound with the glossy cardstock cover. This was the first appearance of the two IPs together. There was a video game that came out in the 90s, and there was a film that started a series that came out in 2004. But this is where it began in this series. 1,007 copies on the census. From Valiant, their top book is Super Mario Bros. #1. This is based on the Super Mario Brothers Nintendo game system. Now, Valiant had the rights to these Nintendo characters, and we're going to see a lot of this on this particular list. Now, I'm not familiar with the creators because they were kind of here. George Caragione and Bill Vallely did the story. Art Nichols, Mike McClellan, and George Widman did the art. And this is basically Super Mario Brothers, right? Nintendo developed the game in 1995 in Japan. It came to U.S. in arcades in 1986. There was a home version in 1987. And this in 1990 kind of coincides with an animated TV series about Super Mario Brothers. And of course, 90s kids know Mario Brothers very well, and so do younger kids because it has become such a popular franchise. This ran for 6 issues, 924 copies. The next book is also from Valiant. It is Super Mario Brothers Special Edition, the same art team as Super Mario Brothers #1, and this clocks in with 693 copies on the population report. Number 48 on the list is from Dark Horse. It is Dark Horse Presents number 36, the variant cover. And this is the first appearance of Aliens vs. Predator. So this predates the series. Now, Dark Horse Presents was an anthology title. And it's like in this, it's one of 3 stories in this. It's black and white. And basically, it was used to sometimes launch miniseries or ongoing series that Dark Horse had. Sometimes they'd bring characters back a few times to see what their popularity was. But Aliens vs. Predator, I'm pretty sure they already had planned that they were going to do a miniseries at this point in time. And this clocks in with 624 copies in the census. Going back to Valiant. We're going back to Dark Horse and Valiant a lot quicker than DC this year. The number 49 on the list is Legend of Zelda #1. This is the first Valiant comic book. Right? Or the first Valiant brand emblem. This is the first time you see the Valiant, star thing there. George Caragione did the story. Rodney Ramos did the art. This was a video game that premiered in 1986, became an animated TV series in the U.S. in 1989, and then led to, the popularity of the video game and the TV series led to this series, which ran for 5 issues, and there's 616 copies in the population report. Our next book is Batman 451. Just a classic Joker cover. Marv Wolfman did the story. Norm Brayfogle did the cover. Jim Aparo and Mike DiCarlo did the interior art. This was a big seller. Batman, like right before Spider-Man by Todd McFarlane came along, was the bestseller across all titles. So there are plenty of these out there. doesn't have a tremendous amount of value in a 9.8 because there's a large number of copies, 455 copies on the census. At number 57 on the list, we go back to Marvel and back to Spider-Man number 1. It is Spider-Man number 1, the UPC Gold Edition. These were distributed through Walmart. It's the same as the gold, except you have a white UPC code on the cover. This is very sought after by collectors because it is hard to find, and there are just 536 copies on the population report. Going back to Dark Horse, this is Dark Horse number 36. This is the cover A, first appearance of Aliens versus Predator. I don't think there's much of a difference in value between the two books, the standard cover and the variant. There are, and not a huge difference in the population report. This has 521 copies, just 103 less than the other one. Let's go to Walt Disney Publications. This is Roger Rabbit number 1. This is based on the 1988 film Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which in turn was based on a 1981 novel Who Censored Roger Rabbit by Gary K. Wolfe. Kate Worley and Doug Rice did the stories. Rick Hoberg, Simons Langley did the art, and Hoberg and Steve Leahola did the cover. This is all new adventures of Roger Rabbit. You can see that the guy with him in the cartoon car is not Bob Hoskins, and there's no Jessica Rabbit to be seen. That would have made this cover much more popular. If they did like a Jessica Rabbit, like Adam Hughes cover, this would be a very pricey book. And also what we're seeing here is Walt Disney has moved away from Gladstone, and they've kind of moved away from their traditional characters in a sense to these animated properties that they have and the TV shows, because the Disney Channel was on cable and was coming up with new material, and they were coming up with comic books for kids that complemented that. This has 463 copies in the census. Going back to Dark Horse, it's Terminator number 1. John Arcudi did the story. Chris Warner did the cover and art. It's a 4-issue miniseries. It's the first Dark Horse issue. Now had published a series already. It was the first appearance of Terminator, the classic film starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and directed by James Cameron. This has 444 copies on the population report. The third DC book on the list is Batman number 450. Also a Joker cover. This is prior to the previous issue. Norm Breyfogle cover. Brief origin of the Joker. 380 copies. Still with DC is Sandman number 19, the Error variant. Pages 18 and 19 were switched, which was confusing if you were reading it. It's a little more sought after by collectors. There are 369 copies on the population report. Our friends at Valiant come back again with Captain N Game Master by George Caragione. Bob Layton, Ken Lopez, and Rod Ramos did the art. So Captain N, the Game Master, was an NBC animated TV series that ran from 1989 to 1981. It was a Saturday morning cartoon. It had to be named Captain N because of laws, FCC regulations surrounding the promotion of toys and video games on Saturday morning cartoons. So he's supposed to be Captain Nintendo. Basically, as I understand it, they would show in the cartoon him playing different video games that Nintendo had out, from Super Mario Brothers to, Mike Tyson's Super Punch and so on and so forth. He had previously appeared. His first appearance of Captain N was in Nintendo Game System number 1. And this particular book has a total of 318 copies on the population report. Going back to Dark Horse and something completely different. This is Chevelle Noir number 7. It has a Dave Stevens cover. These are square-bound books, but with regular comic book cover paper. They're not cardstock covers. It is a popular Dave Stevens book, and I think I have to edit that image for consumption on my channel. It's Stevens. It's popular. It's funny. In my personal collection, I did collect Chevelle Noir. I was a big Dark Horse collector at the time, but somehow I missed this issue. I was able to, for a pretty good price, procure a copy on eBay that is minty. And probably will be submitted at some point in my life. 277 copies on the population report. Staying with Dark Horse, it's Predator number 4. Mark Verheiden did the story. Ron Randall, Chris Warner did the art, and Chris Warner did the cover. These are two big IPs they have at the time, Aliens and Predator. We've talked about them before. They also got Terminator. 263 copies on the population report. Another Valiant book is Game Boy number 1. This is the first Valiant brand emblem and the first Valiant something. George Caraggione did the story. Todd Haydrick, Art Nichols, and Gray Morrow. Gray Morrow did the art. Right, Gray Morrow is known for like DC Superstars 11 with Zatanna and some great Western and horror and romance comics at DC in the late 60s, early 70s. He did Game Boy #1. Ran for 4 issues. Basically, it was the handheld system, right? And that premiered in Japan in '89, North America in 1990. And so some villain comes out of the Game Boy and threatens them all or something. And there are 260 copies in the population report. Our next book is going back to DC, or DC Vertigo, right? Vertigo is an imprint of DC for these more mature stories. This is Sandman #13 by Neil Gaiman and Mike Zulli with a Dave McKean cover. It's the first appearance of Hob Gadling and Lady Joanna Constantine. Hob Gadling was a character, and if you saw the TV series, he was a character that Morpheus had an interaction with, and basically a wager that a human would not want to be immortal. So he grants Hob Gadling immortality. Lady Joanna Constantine is a ancestor of John Constantine from Hellblazer fandom. They had to use another Joanna Constantine in modern day because for the Netflix series, because they didn't have the rights to use John Constantine because he was being used in other properties. I think they're still developing the Keanu Reeves sequel. This has 259 copies on the census. From Mirage is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #30. Rick Veitch did everything. No more Eastman and Laird. This is Rick Veitch. This has 259 copies on the census. The top book from Caliber Press is Creatures of the Id #1, which is the first appearance of Frank Einstein, Madman. Named after Frank Sinatra and Albert Einstein, but when you put together Frank Einstein, Mike Allred created this character, has used him in a number of stories and crossovers, but this is his first appearance, and there are 253 copies in the population report. From Valiant is Super Mario Brothers #2. This clocks in with a total of 249 copies in the population report. From Now Comics, their top book is Terminator The Burning Earth #1, and this includes the first published artwork by Alex Ross. This is just a kind of spin-off Terminator story. What makes it popular is the Alex Ross first artwork. There are 248 copies on the census. From Mirage is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #32. Mike Bowe did the story and cover, and along with Eastman and Eric Talbot did the art. And we can see the popularity of TMNT at this point versus just regular DC properties. There are 232 copies on the census. Also from Mirage is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Christmas Special #1, featuring Michelangelo. Jim Lawson did the story, cover, and art. 225 copies. Also from Mirage is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles the Movie, special one-shot. Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman did the story and cover. They were art also by Lawson and Talbot. There was the movie that came out in 1990, which was live action with, I think it was the voices that did the animated series doing the voices of the Turtles. It was successful at the box office. It grossed $200 million. Critically, middling. There are 208 copies in the population report. Going back to Dark Horse, Aliens versus Predator #0, which has a Mike Mignola cover. This, I guess it was really a 5-issue miniseries with an issue #0. 202 copies on the census. From Valiant is Legend of Zelda #2. It's just #2, but it's a short series, so it's easy to collect them all. 192 copies. From Mirage, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #33. Jan Strnad did the story. Richard Corbin did the cover. Did not know that. You learn something new every day. Do all the Corbin fans have a copy of this issue? I'll have to ask my friend Ian. There are 192 copies on the census. Going back to DC, finally, this is the 6th DC book on the list, and is Suicide Squad #48. John Ostrander and Kim Yale did the story. Jeff Isherwood did the art, and Steve Lightley did the cover. This is a retelling of The Killing Joke from Barbara Gordon's perspective. I think it's in the subsequent issue. She would be revealed as her Oracle personality, but this is from December. That's not until 1991. I wonder if it'll make the list for next year. This has 190 copies on the population report. From Now Comics is Married with Children, #1, based on the Fox TV show that ran from 1987 to 1997, starring Ed O'Neill, Katie Sagal, and Christina Applegate. There were 259 episodes of the TV series, but just 7 issues of the series. But there were a lot of one-shots and mini-series that came out of this. Catherine Llewellyn did the story. Dave Schwartz, Dave Mowry, and John Strangleland did the art. 187 copies on the census. Going back to Walt Disney, it's Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers #1. We talked about how these Disney Channel series produced comic book series, and this is another example. This ran for 19 issues, and it followed the mischievous chipmunks, Chip and Dale, on, I guess, some rescue ranger adventures. There are 175 copies on the census. Back to Mirage, back to TMNT. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles #31. Mike Zulli did story, cover, and art. There are 175 copies on the census. The top book from Aircell is Men in Black #1. This is the first appearance of Men in Black. Lowell Cunningham did the story. Sandy Carruthers did the art. And Max Fellwalker did the cover. This, of course, became a popular film and series. The film starring Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith and Vincent D'Onofrio, which became a big hit. And this is, I said, this is one of the lower print run books that Aircell was a very small publisher, and so there's a fairly large demand for this. You would think it would be worth more, right? Like a 9.8, we don't see too often. The most recent sale of a 9.8 was actually $2,000. And again, I don't talk about value that much, but it's kind of interesting that this very popular property of these federal agents chasing down aliens premiered in this comic book. A lot of people do not know that, but this has a total number of just 167 copies on the census. Going back to Walt Disney, DuckTales #1. Marv Wolfman did the story here. Another animated TV series. This ran for 19 issues, and basically Donald goes off and joins the Navy. So Uncle Scrooge takes custody of the nephews. I don't know where Donald's, I guess, brother or sister. I've never been clear on that. If you know more than I do on that, put it in the comments below. And he goes on adventures, kind of inspired by the Carl Barks adventure stories Donald Duck did in the Golden Age. This has 164 copies on the census. Our next book is Batman #457, the second print. So this got a second print. It's notable by that banner at the top that says New Robin issue. This has 162 copies on the census. From Dark Horse is Aliens vs. Predator issue #3, which comes in with 160 copies on the census. The next book is from Valiant. This is Legends of Zelda #1. It's the no price variant. There is no price on the cover, so it is a rarer book, and it has a total of 148 copies on the census. We're still not to the DC top 10, so we're going through all the indies at this point. We get DC #8, which is Sandman #21. Not a particularly noteworthy issue. In terms of first appearances, 146 copies on the population report. That ties it with the top, not the top book, another book from Caliber Press, which is The Crow #1, the third print. James O'Barr, story, cover, and art. 146 copies on the census. We talked much more in depth in last week's episode about The Crow. Going back to Valiant, and it is Legend of Zelda #3. There are 145 copies of this. DC's 9th book is Batman Annual #14, featuring a Neil Adams cover of Two-Face. Not quite as interesting as his, Batman 232, when Two-Face appeared again in the Bronze Age. There are 144 copies in the census. Another dark horse is Aliens vs. Predator #2. Phil Norwood did the cover. This has 143 copies. The top book from Eclipse is Hobbit issue #2. We talked about Hobbit #1 based on the Tolkien novel. There are 141 copies. It's the top Eclipse book. Another dark horse book is Aliens Earth War #1. So this is an Aliens miniseries by Mark Verheiden with Sam Keith art and a John Bolton cover. 139 copies. And then we finally get to a tie for the 10th DC book, Lobo #2. Talked earlier in this episode about Lobo #1. This is issue #2. 138 copies, and that ties it with Sandman #12. No key significance to this issue. 138 copies. So now let's just go to all the other publishers. And we still have a lot. We have a couple other things to report along the way here. From CFD Publications is Cry for Dawn #2 by Joseph Michael Linsner. 128 copies. Another DC book, and this is Batman #457, the second print newsstand edition. And this is delineated on the population report. This is a much rarer book to get, and it does have a good amount of value. There are 100 copies of this on the population report. If you ever see the banner at the top, look to see if you see the UPC code down below. The top book from Archie Comics is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie special. Is this a different story than the Mirage one? Because it says Laird and Eastman story, cover, and art. Story and cover. Laird, Eastman, Lawson, and Talbot did the art. So, is it a different book? And I don't really know. Same credits. Is it the same interior as the other one? Let me know in the comments below. If you know, if you're a TMNT fan and have both books. I'm not sure. That's interesting. But this has fewer copies in the census of 94. Top book from Innovation is The Vampire Lestat #1. This was a 12-issue miniseries with a John Bolton cover based on the novel by Anne Rice, which was the follow-up to her first novel in this series, an interview with the vampire, which became a motion picture with Tom Cruise and was it Brad Pitt? Kirsten Dunst. There are 92 copies in the census. The next book on the list is Sandman #18. This is the error variant of this book. 3 panels on the first page are printed in blue ink. If you're a Sandman completist, I guess you need it. 80 copies on the population report. The top book from Epic, which is an imprint of Marvel Comics, is a tie. Akira #17, based on the Japanese manga. And that ties it with Akira #18. Both of them by Katsuhiro Otomo. 58 copies. The top book from Nintendo of America is Nintendo Power #11. Super Mario Brothers cover. Promoting Super Mario Brothers #3, the third video game in the series. This has 53 copies in the census. Top book from Gladstone. They're no longer doing the Disney stuff. They're doing EC reprints. This is a reprint of Tales from the Crypt, issue #1 with a Jack Davis cover. It's a reprint of the cover. There are 48 copies in the census. The top book from First Publishing is Betty Boop's Big Break. No number. So the story is by Joshua Quagmire, giggity. Milton Knight did the art, and Leslie Cabarga did the cover. So Betty Boop was very popular in the early 1930s in cartoons, created by Max Fleischer for Paramount Pictures. She first appeared in a cartoon that I just watched. You can find it on YouTube. It's Dizzy Dishes. And she's an anthropomorphic dog. Like, she has dog ears, but she looks pretty much like Betty Boop. She did have her own series of shorts from Paramount throughout the 1930s, 1930 to 39. She also appeared in the first Popeye film, and that similar to one of her other appearances, which is before the Hayes office instituted the motion picture code. So we have pre-code horror in comic books. There's pre-code films in the early 1930s in Hollywood, like Sign of the Cross, which was a major motion picture. Claudette Colbert is seen like topless in a milk bath. There's nudity, there's salacious content. But in this one, Betty Boop, who's childlike, almost infantile at times in appearance, she appeared in that Popeye cartoon, and there was another one which had a tropical theme to it, where she's wearing a lei, the necklace of flowers that is, they give to visitors in Hawaii, and the lei just are the only thing that's covering her up top. So anyway, Betty Boop, it's a big break from First Comics. 43 copies in the census. The top book from New England Comics is The Tick, issue number 8. This is a variant cover. Basically, it's as we would call today, a virgin cover. And it comes in with a count of 39. The top book from Pure Imagination is Movie Star News Volume 1, featuring Betty Page, Queen of Curves. Greg Theakson did the text. It's not really a comic book, and it's smaller than a comic book, but it's a Dave Stevens cover, which makes it very popular and desirable, especially after the film of his. 38 copies in the census. Our top book from Revolutionary Comics is Rock and Roll Comics number 9, featuring the band Kiss, R.I.P. Ace Frehley. Kiss was a band that was formed in 1973, became very popular in the late 70s. They did appear in a couple of issues of Howard the Duck. They did have that Marvel Super Special. And Rock and Roll Comics, covered a different rock group or individual in each issue. Kiss, a little more popular. Kiss has had a lot of comic book adaptations over the years. There are 33 copies. From Fantagraphics Books, their top book is Hate number 1 by Peter Baggy. This very much in the, the tradition or the tenor of the Undergrounds from the early 1970s. It did run for 30 issues, and there are 31 copies in the population report. Top book from Eternity is Puppet Master number 1. It's based on the hit movie. It was a movie that wasn't released theatrically. It was direct to video. The Puppet Master, a 1989 release about somebody who, two people who control puppets. I've never seen it. Should I? Dan DeVries did the story, and Glenn Lumsden did the cover and art. There are 27 copies in the census. The top book from Harvey is New Kids on the Block, NKOTB number 1. Ernie Colon did the cover. The title sounds redundant. New Kids on the Block and then the NKOTB. There were a lot of New Kids comics that Harvey did at this time. This particular series ran 8 issues. It was based on the popular boy band of the time that included, for those of you that are adults, Donnie Wahlberg, who was an actor, and more his younger brother Mark, a little more popular, was a member of the band early on before they gained popularity. He was in his, what was he in? He was in his own boy band. I'm not really that familiar with boy bands of the 90s, to be honest with you. 26 copies in the census. The top book from Arrows Comics is Butterscotch number 1 by Milo Manara, with this incredibly suggestive cover that I think I'm going to have to edit. They ran for 3 issues, 21 copies on the census. Arrows Comics did adult stuff. Speaking of adult stuff, the top book from Last Gasp is Cherry number 11. It's a special 3D issue featuring Cherry Pop-Tart. 20 copies on the census. The top book from Allied American Artists is WOW, The World of Ward. Bill Ward's telephone portfolio, the pinup arc of Jack Cole, Torchy color pinup. Is that Torchy from Quality Comics? At any rate, WOW has 18 copies on the census. The top book from Genesis West is The Last of the Viking Heroes, Summer Special, issue number 2, with a guest appearance by Donatello of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. 15 copies in the population report. The top book from Atomica Press is A1 True Life Bikini Confidential. Back covers by Brian Boland. Just a whole bunch of art with an Adam Hughes cover. It also features Betty Page and Mr. Monster. There's an Alan Moore story of Bo Jeffries. A lot of creators in this. 14 copies in the census, which ties it with David Anthony Kraft's comics interview number 84, Sam Keith cover featuring Alien and Wolverine. That's kind of cool. 14 copies. That's top book from Fictioneer Books. The top book from Kitchen Sink Press is Xenozoic Tales issue number 10, which has 13 copies in the census. The top book from World of Fandom is Ratfink number 1 by Craig Ellis with a Rick Sloan cover and art. Kind of inspired by EC Comics in terms of the cover layout. 12 copies in the census. The top book from North Star is Faust number 1, the 4th print. This has 12 copies in the census. The top book from Viz Comics is Cobra number 1. This is story and art by Ryuichi Terasawa, which was adapted into English by Marv Wolfman. I don't know a lot about this. Ran for 12 issues, 11 copies on the census. The top book from Millennium is Wild Wild West number 1 with an Adam Hughes cover. This became popular with some of these, like Innovation and Millennium and Adventure. This was based on the TV series of the 1960s, going back to retro stuff. This is, 9 years before the movie came out. This is based on the TV series that ran from 1965 to 1969, starring Robert Conrad and Ross Martin as Secret Service agents in the Old West. And you can see they look like that. The guy on the left looks like Robert Conrad, and he looks like he's ready to race Gabe Kaplan in a 100-yard dash. And the other guy looks like Ross Martin. This ran for 4 issues, and there are 11 copies on the census, I guess because of the Adam Hughes cover. The top book from Adventure Comics is Planet of the Apes number 1, based on the Pierre Boulle novel and the 1968 film and all the adaptations from 20th Century Fox. Dale Keown did the cover. It did have, you can see that on the cover, that green on the left, that was like a kind of a probably like a 60-pound paper cover that was half there and wrapped around the back cover. There was a second color that was also used, and there are 10 copies in the population report. The top book from First Comics, and I'm going to distinguish that from First Publications, is Dreadstar number 50. They took over the property from Epic. This is created by Jim Starlin. This has 9 copies on the census, as does Mad number 292, which is the top book from EC, which features the Super Mario Brothers on the cover. Also 9 copies on the census, and that ties it with the top book from Ripoff Press, which is Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers number 11, the 4th print, reprinting the 1971 book. 9 copies on the census. With 7 copies on the census is the top book from 3D Zone, which is 3D Exotic Beauties number 1. This is an LB Cole cover. And that's curious. He was still alive. Did he do this? He died in 1995. Is this an original? I don't think this, because it looks like the content would have been, it looks like the content would have been not something that he would have done in the Golden Age, right? Even for the salaciousness would have been too much for the comics code to handle, right? So the pencils and inks are by... I think this is like a new LB Cole cover. If you know better in the comments, I'm not sure, right? LB Cole cover, 3D Exotic Beauties 1. I can't determine if my guess is, but I don't know for sure. Did LB Cole do this originally in 1990? He passed away in 1995, so that's possible. If it is, how much does this go for? Let's see if it's been on Heritage. They might have more information. So this is something I didn't do all the research into, because now, as I'm talking about it, I kind of 3D Exotic Beauties. Okay. There's a 9.2. LB Cole cover. How much? That's a very, very strange book. If you have more information, let me know in the comments. I'd really be interested in knowing more about that. And maybe, if this is original LB Cole, art that he did in 1990, that is very curious. And it should make the book very sought after. At any rate, there's 7 copies of this, which ties it with the top book from Fantico Enterprises, which is Gore Shriek, Volume 2, Number 1. Also 7 copies. And that ties it with the top book from Vortex Comics, which is Legends of NASCAR number 2, featuring Richard Petty. And it has a hologram cover. That has 7 copies on the census. Which ties it with the top book from Slave Labor, which is One-Fisted Tales number 1, which is an adult comic, certainly. Ran for 11 issues, 7 copies on the census. The top book from Aardvark Vanaheim is Cerebus the Aardvark number 134. This has 6 signature series copies on the census. The top book from HM Communications is Heavy Metal, Volume 14, Number 5, with a Frank Frazetta cover. 5 copies on the census. The top book from Kamiko is Grendel, Volume 2, Number 40, the variant cover. Or no, Volume 2. Volume 2 came out the same time as number 1. I'm not sure about this. Tim Sale cover, right? 4 copies on the census. The top book from Continuity is Armor number 1, Neil Adams cover, 3 copies on the census. The top book from Malibu Comics is Plan 9 from Outer Space, no number. It's the adaptation of the Ed Wood movie with a Rurik Tyler cover. This is widely considered, the 1957 film by Ed Wood is widely considered one of the worst movies of all time, and is a favorite amongst like Mystery Science Theater 3000 fans because it is so cheesy. There was the Ed Wood movie that was that 1994, which is kind of funny because my friend's brother is an extra in that. This has a total of Plan 9, 3 copies on the census. The top book from Piranha Press, which is an imprint of DC Comics, is A Cotton Candy Autopsy. This is a trade paperback that collects some of the stories from Beautiful Stories for Ugly Children by Dave Lopare. and Dan Sweetman, 2 copies in the census. The top book from Harvey Pekar is American Splendor, number 15, 2 copies in the census. And finally, the top book from Double Diamond is Hepcats number 6 by Martin Wagner. We talked about Hepcats in last week's episode. This also with 2 copies on the census. Whew, that's a lot of comic books for 1990. A lot of publishers, a lot of independents, like outpacing in terms of the number of copies submitted DC, right? A lot of the Valiant video game books and a lot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff. And Aliens and Predator and that sort of Dark Horse stuff. But even though Gambit comes in the top spot, it's Spider-Man number 1 that's all over the list with all the different publishings and variants and the Platinums and the UPCs and so on and so forth, the silver and the gold. So anyway, I'd like to thank you for stopping by. I hope you appreciated this episode. You can take a look at a couple of my other videos here. And this is Jim saying, until next time, enjoy your comics.